my goodness gracious, scorekeepers. We are back. It is time for another episode of The Score. This is the podcast where we look at arts and culture through our Black queer lenses. I am, of course, as always, your co-host, Rocky Jones, and I am here with my two beautiful gender fugitive co-hosts. First and foremost, well, not foremost, but first, uh, we have the lovely, talented, moisturized Paige Reynolds. Hello, Paige Reynolds. How are you?
Hello, hello. I'm well. As your resident witch, I am looking forward to Venus retrograde. I was just all up in the charts and whatnot. Happy end of Mars retrograde. Happy
Ooh,
beginning of Venus retrograde,
So now,
everyone.
what is Venus retrograde exactly? What does that mean for us?
You know what? Here's the vibe I'm getting. It
Okay.
is a lot about reassessing relationships and like also relationship to not just one to one, but relationship
Mm-hmm.
to your community
Mm-hmm.
as well. I've seen that theme coming up in my week already. I think given the moment we're in, we're gonna see lots of things about mutual aid and community care, but also like what does that really mean? And what makes that hard? And what are some of the ways that we're maybe out of practice as a society, or depending on where we live, or because it may be harder with certain identities. Yeah, so I think that's what's gonna be coming up.
That's
Hmm.
kind of crazy because I have been thinking about my relationship to this community, the Twin Cities community in particular, in ways that perhaps I hopefully, fingers crossed, might have something to talk about in a little bit, but we'll see. But that's just kind of crazy. That resonated with me very.
Ooh, ooh, not me being an amateur astrologer.
Yeah, look at you. Oh, I love to be an amateur astrologer. It's one of my favorite things. But that laugh, of course, what would we do without our brilliant Dr. Lee Bynum? Hello, Dr. Lee Bynum.
Mustard on the beat, ho.
I was waiting for an accent,
What,
I
what?
have to say. I had girded my loins this time. Because when you came out with that baby gat, did you see that TikTok I sent you last week? Like all British rappers in the 90s. Oi! My flippity gibbet!
So when they first started dating, for those on who are new to the show, you may not know that my brother's wife is from London. And when they first started dating, like all I could do was ask her to say things, like completely ridiculous things, because I found her accent so incredibly charming. And because she is such a great sport, thank you, Zainab. She never complained. She never refused to say a thing. She never thought these people are ridiculous. Let me get up out of this house and country.
Well,
So
at least she
yeah,
didn't say it to your
she
face.
did. She sure didn't.
I'm sure that group text with her London friends was popping.
Let me tell you about these Americans. Uh-huh. Yes.
I just assume they're getting their lick back by like mocking our accents too.
Oh,
I
I'm
just know they
sure.
do.
So what's going on? What's new with you, Dr. Bynum?
We are sitting over here in New York City, dealing with our incredibly corrupt mayor.
Mm.
But on the other side of the ledger, my husband is preparing for a concert in DC with the National Philharmonic and Washington National Chorus. We're super excited about that. He's premiering a piece by Nkiru Okoye, friend of the
Mm.
show.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, and the piece is called And the People Celebrated. What did the people celebrate in the piece? The piece was written to acknowledge the election of Barack Obama. So that is what the
Mm.
people are celebrating in the song. And hopefully, the current resident of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue won't hear about it because I've heard he gets really in his feelings when people acknowledge other presidents. And I'd love for this concert not to be canceled. But those of you who will be in DC on Saturday, March 15th, you should see it at the Music Center at the Strathmore.
Hmm. Well, that's exciting. Well,
It
we should put a
is.
link to the show notes,
Yeah,
or
we
in the show notes
absolutely
rather.
we'll do both.
We'll do
We
both. We'll do
absolutely
both.
should. I'm very excited about this concert for Damien. I'm super excited about the piece, and yeah, I do like the idea that crosstown they'll be singing about my favorite president while somebody else's favorite president is what? Throwing Big Macs at a TV screen, arguing with
The
God,
wall.
whatever's happening over there. Yeah.
And I can say, as somebody who was in Washington, D.C. on election night 2016, the people did indeed celebrate.
Hey,
And it
wait,
was,
in 2016?
oh no, no, sorry, 2008.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Oh my
Thank you. I
God.
was about to say,
I
who
was
were you
Oh my
like,
with?
God.
that's not what I was doing in
No,
2016. No.
2016, everyone was crying
Would you like to disclose
and
something, Mr.
trying not to
Jones?
throw themselves out of building. 2008, 2008, 2008, 2008. I'm so sorry. No, as someone who was in Washington in 2008, the people did indeed celebrate. And
Yes,
it was, I mean, it was so fun. That was one of the best nights of my life.
it really was. I was in Brooklyn for watching election results with a bunch of friends, and it was, I mean, we were so excited. We were
So
shocked
excited.
and happy. And I was with a bunch of people who were friends from college. So there was also like the alum aspect of the whole thing. Like it was a great night. Little did we know, only 8 years later,
8 short years later. But
America
no,
would
it was
show its ass.
we were watching the results come in at a friend's house in Mount Pleasant. We all realized that it was going to happen. I called my mom. We were both crying on the phone. And then my friend Juliana and I just were like, let's go out and see what's happening in the streets. And so we grabbed a 2 liter of tonic water, poured a whole bunch of gin in there, shook it up, and walked on down to U Street, and it was party,
Not you, Street.
mayhem. People, the streets were just closed off. We were just walking down the street. Everyone was yelling, fireworks going off, music, dancing, just randomly like ran into a group of our friends who we
Oh.
weren't watching with, like another group of friends, and we just had like just an impromptu dance party in the street. Walked home, walked through the drive-through at the McDonald's with my roommate. It was just a celebration. And then went to work the next day, was quite late, and with my boss who was a Republican at the time, and
Oh, Jesus.
she was she was unhappy.
Mhm.
Which made me even happier.
Right.
So it was quite a time to be alive.
Aw. I'm just always glad that my grandparents got to see
Hmm.
that
Mhm.
Hmm.
and then
Mhm.
did not have to see 2016.
Yeah.
Not
Facts.
so like.
Facts.
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 I'm like, y'all lived long, beautiful lives, both up into their 90s and got that beautiful cherry on top. And then didn't
Mhm.
have to see this. I'm like,
Yeah.
y'all did that. I'm
I
glad.
I often think about my grandmother and how it's amazing she was able to stay alive to see Kamala become the first Black woman vice president, but then
Mhm.
went
Didn't have
ahead
to see the
and
other stuff.
went ahead
Mhm.
and and passed away before all the rest of it happened. And also, my dad and my stepdad,
Mhm.
they both didn't have
Mhm.
to see all of this, and
That's a
Yeah,
silver lining.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm
seriously.
just saying.
This-
I'm just saying.
yeah, my own parents, I'm just like, y'all seen quite a ricochet back and forth in your lifetime. Wow.
The whiplash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Yeah.
whiplash for me
Right. I
Yes.
mean,
is wild. I can't even imagine.
well, I
Mhm.
think a lot about that for kids, and really thinking about what it is to be in elementary school right now and seeing like grown-up tantrum throwing, right? Like
Mhm.
literally in the White House, whether it's coming from the elected president or the appointed president, like you are absolutely seeing these fully grown people who have all of this power, constantly complaining about how they're put upon, and then also literally throwing tantrums, screaming, yelling, acting like children. Like this can't be a good thing for kids to see and think this is how you model professional behavior or any other behavior. Like I was so proud when Obama was elected. And I remember having an argument with my boss, who ostensibly was not a Republican, but who was kind of pointing out, the iconography of Obama's election wasn't going to mean much. And I remember saying to him, like,
Wow.
I appreciate that as a not black person, that this, may really not have the kind of resonance for you that it's having for some of us, but A, as a person who is alive for the last, 50 years, I do expect you to get why even the election of him is significant. And then secondly, what it will mean for specifically Black kids growing up, being
Hmm.
able to see a different kind of leadership being modeled. I mean, for goodness sakes, when I was growing up, we had a Black governor in Virginia, somebody we went to
Hmm.
church with. That was huge for me. Like
Hmm.
it was huge. Like there was something that shifted in my mind, and then I ran for class president. I don't know if I would have done that if we didn't have Governor Wilder, right? So I
Hmm.
still remember that conversation with my old boss, who was right about a lot of stuff, but I really don't think he was right about that. I think even the existence of Obama indicated that something in America was shifting. Didn't shift far enough, but like
Hmm.
it absolutely dislodged a thing, and we are now living in the consequences of it. But
Yeah.
all of this is to say I was right. Sorry.
Well, of
We
course,
might have
of course. I
actually
mean, that
lost
goes
the
without
lead, but
saying, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's a very exciting day on the score. Maybe not quite as exciting as that day in 2008, but maybe more. But we have been doing this new version of the score since October. Just sort of, kind of coming home and regrouping and figuring out what it is we want to do with this show moving forward and how we want to use this platform and this space. And it's basically just been the three of us, just chit-chatting about whatever we wanted to chit-chat
Mhm.
about. But today, it's so exciting. We have our first guest of the Score 2.0. We
Yay.
are going to bring in our dear, dear friend Pablo Siqueiros. And if you are an old fan of this show, you might remember him from way back in the day, one of our very first episodes. But Pablo is just awesome and smart, a brilliant artist, a brilliant admin. And he has now gone off on into the philanthropic space. So we will
Mhm.
bring him in a second. But before we do, something completely unrelated. And Paige, I don't know if you will have thoughts about this. Lee, I think you definitely will. But just really, really quick, I feel like we would be remiss if we talked a couple months ago about this new season of Drag Race that started. We are now about halfway through. Uh, Lee, I'm dying to hear your thoughts.
I mean I have a lot of thoughts. First of all, I will have to say part of what is very exciting to me about this show is I'm always kind of wondering, what does a person do with musical theater training in particular because it's like an intense kind of training. It's very specific kind of a thing. And like either you're on Broadway or you're on a sitcom, or apparently you're on Drag Race, because I feel like this is the other thing that it is turning out that it's super helpful for. So
Hmm.
I have to say, Anya Nerve and
Yes.
Susie Toot are really, really impressive because both of them are applying the musical theater skill set very thoughtfully to drag and are using it to cut through a lot of noise. They're also both really funny, really, really skilled at assuming characters, excellent lip syncers, and both of them sing in tune, which is a very big deal for me. I am definitely pulling really hard for Anya Nerve
Yes.
because other than the fact that she seems not to like other drag queens, like I think she's exceptionally interested. I don't think Susie is going to be easy to beat, though. But I like this sort of horse race. Um, I think there are some other girls on the show who are super interesting. I like Sam a lot because I really admire precision, and boy, is she precise. Like there
Hmm.
is not a hair out of place. She beats the hot hell out of that face. I have really enjoyed her. And I'll pour a little out for Corey King. Corey King had some damn good talking heads.
Yes.
But
Everything else, however.
no, the other stuff, bless her heart, it wasn't coming together. And anytime I feel like I'm enjoying a contestant more in their boy drag than in their girl drag, like I know they're not long for this world. And I thought Corey was so entertaining with every single talking head, but he was focused on all the wrong things. He
Mhm.
needed to have less focus on butthole and a lot more, butthole is a person, and a lot more focus on not replicating the same disaster on the runway week after week after week after week.
Those
Even after they said we don't want to
fashions,
see it anymore, he still kept coming out with the same dress.
the fashions were
Oh
just
my
so
God.
bad.
And the hair
And the wigs.
and the makeup was also chalky.
Ugh.
But I
Oh.
do think he'll come back for something like Canada versus the world and maybe like mop up the floor with those girls because he's
Well,
far
what
from
was
untalented and an excellent lip sync artist. But
and very well, very funny when it's
when he's
not sort of
himself.
like a yes.
Yeah, he's not
Yes.
funny in the skits, but
Exactly.
he's really funny
As
in the talking
himself.
heads. And I
Yes.
think if the prize is him and playing Jane, who apparently is his good Judy, if they get a little show together, I mean, Damien will watch it. Like I believe there are people out there who would be very into that kind of humor. But yeah, I think the fashions are what's killing him. Can we also talk about lingerie really quick?
Of course.
I mean, she's a pretty girl. I love seeing any dark complexion, long-legged gazelle running around anywhere. And those have been two beautiful lip syncs. But whatever is going on in her head, I need her out of her head and in this game. Like I need you in this game, ma'am. Because she's so pretty. Like
She's
she
very
moves
pretty.
beautifully.
Yes, absolutely. However, that snatch game as Rosa Parks, ma'am. What we're not
Oh
gonna
my
do.
God. Yeah.
That was that was she should be in jail. I'm so sorry.
I mean, meanwhile, when Lexi's Snatch Game completely unraveled, it stayed funny. Like I
Hmm.
actually thought she was doing it on purpose. She was doing Gilbert Gottfried, right? And it just didn't come together. So every time Rue would go to her, she'd kind of be like, "Oh shit, fuck, what am I supposed to be saying? Shit," and then wouldn't say anything but that, and it was just absolutely hilarious. But it was it. I know it didn't feel good.
No,
I know it
no.
didn't feel good.
Well, I mostly agree with all of your assessments. I think the one thing that I might take issue with is I recognize on an objective level that Susie Toot is very uh, talented and is doing everything correct, but I don't feel moved by her. I don't feel like that thing
Yeah,
that I feel like when Anya comes on the
yeah,
screen. Because
yeah.
Anya just has it. She
No,
just
I agree
has
with that. I
that it
completely agree with that.
factor where like she comes on screen and even if like her fashion is a little crunchy, sometimes her makeup's a little crunchy, it doesn't really matter because she just comes out and she just oozes
Mhm.
charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent.
Yeah, she's so
She just has
charismatic.
that thing that
Yeah.
just draws you to her. Like she has that essence where when she's performing, she makes it look and feel easy.
Hmm.
That you're just like, oh my God, like how she didn't win the Rusical. I don't understand. Sam Star won with the Cher
Well,
performance.
yeah. No, I mean, I do. I mean, it's RuPaul. If you do
Yeah.
a share impression and it's even in the ballpark of accurate, you get a lot of points from her.
I suppose, but like the criticism being in rehearsal you didn't pick up the steps fast enough, but you were fantastic in the performance.
Well, that's what happens when you get a choreographer guest judge.
Jamal, what?
Yeah. Yeah. But I will say this though, because I feel like we're getting a little bit of a Nymphia and Saphira thing again, where there are two people who are clearly like a head above other people and are offering very different versions of drag excellence. And it will be whatever tickles the fancy of Rue and Michelle at the end that I think ends up lasting. I'm really pulling for Anya, but I also I get that they're seeing something else, right?
Mhm,
And the thing that I think that they may be getting that we can't get is what the musical theater skill set does for live performance, because we're not seeing them live, we're seeing it through the TV. And there can be the thing that I always love so much about theater is like when you see really good theater performers, they do something live that it's not even necessarily something you can capture on screen, right?
mhm.
And I can believe that Susie is operating at a very exciting level in the house that is drawing them in a way that isn't completely penetrating in
That
on
makes
TV.
sense.
Because
That makes
they're giving
sense.
her very, very high
Hmm.
praise, but I kind of felt that way about Saphira last year. If you remember, like I was
Hmm.
never as big on her as I was on Nymphia because I felt like there was something that I was not getting through the screen, and kind of the same way for Saphira. And I think it might just be that live theater thing because Anya is better with TV than with
Yes.
a lot of these girls. Like she understands what the show is. She understands how to be on the show. Um,
I
and I
mean,
think she
like
should
with
win.
that SNL parody or
Oh
whatever,
my
and
God.
she was the
Yeah.
host, it really
Yeah. It
felt
was
like
so
she was
good.
hosting
It really,
SNL.
really did.
Like
And
it just
Quinta
felt,
pointed it out so
yeah.
effectively, you know? That was
Oh,
very high praise from her.
and that was so cute when she met Quinta in the Untucked and lost her mind. I would have lost my mind
No, I
too.
would have too. I love
I
Quinta.
mean, I can't
I'm
even.
absolutely obsessed.
And I noticed we didn't mention Jules or Arietti.
Um, I, I'm not. I don't know if I'm getting Arietti. No, no shade to her. Like
No,
I can see that she is stitching the hot
a
hell out of these
very talented
costumes.
seamstress.
I just I think because of blame it on the edit, right? Like there's something that's a little whiny about her talking heads, and I'm not
Hmm.
big on whiny.
Hmm.
Like I get it. She lost three design challenges that she thought she was going to win. Um, but she needs to tell that
Oh
to Rue and
well.
Michelle. Like, yeah, I feel that way. And I like Jewels, but she's no kind of friend. That's exactly the kind of friend I do not want.
Oh, well, thank you for indulging us, Paige.
Of course.
We hadn't talked about it, and I was just like, oh, I want to know because we're like halfway through.
I'm hoping to join you all in these discussions soon. Me and a very close friend have just decided we want to start watching Drag Race together on Fridays.
Oh,
Oh,
It's just
good.
like, and also a way to just like consistently hang out and see each other. And engage in this very gay thing that we are always missing. So
Well,
soon.
next week we will be done with at least the series, Noah's Ark. We might
Oh,
move on to the
wow.
movie or whatever, but we had talked about maybe doing a season of Drag Race, like an old one.
Oh.
Like,
It's time.
I mean, I know there are lots of Drag Race recap podcasts out there, but I think we have would have a special perspective. But who knows? We'll talk about it and we'll see what we decide. Because also, I mean, there are so many choices out there that we could
So many. So
that we
I
could
many.
am
try. But
down. I'm totally down for it. Also, has there ever been a competition show or something televised that features drag kings?
Yes.
oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh,
There,
okay.
there are two. So I know for a fact, Call Me Mother. It's a Canadian show. Um, and there have been a couple of RuPaul associated drag queens who've either been judges or contestants, but they also have drag kings, and one of their judges is a drag king. And what is the show? Is it the Boulet Brothers? Is that the
Hmm.
other drag show? I'm pretty certain they have drag
Well,
kings on that. I've
Dragula.
never, I've never, I did watch like the first
I
episode, but
watched like one episode of it and it's like spooky
yeah,
ooky
it's got
kind of
horror
gross
and
horror
gore, and that's not
queens
my
and I'm just
thing.
not yeah, it's not for me.
I'm like, where the gowns? Where the
I think I
gowns
might be
at?
into that. I'm like, what's that called? Can you spell
Dragula. Dragula. Like
it?
Dracula with a G.
Noted. Thank you. Going into the notes app.
Between the three of us, we will cover every drag television show that is around. I am confident.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, our dear friend Pablo is in the waiting room, so I think we should bring him in. And I'm super excited to have a little conversation with him about the state of the arts. So we will be right back with Pablo Siqueiros. And we are back, and I'm so excited to welcome our old friend Pablo Siqueiros back to the score. Welcome, Pablo. It's so good to see your face.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. I love seeing your faces. It's great to be back on a podcast that I feel like the last episode that I was on was right at the very beginning,
It was
within the
one of the
first
first
Yeah.
season.
ones.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't remember.
So
Did you play Fire the Cannon with us?
I did. I
Yes.
That was fun. We should bring that back.
We should. We should. We could even extend it, like the
Mhm.
literary canon.
I would love
Yes.
The
that.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
much fodder.
Oh yeah. I have opinions.
So many opinions. But before we get into it, just want to remind our listeners all about Pablo. Pablo is currently a program officer at the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council here at the Twin Cities. But before that, well, originally he's from San Diego. He has been here since 2017. And of course, he is an amazing opera singer with a Bachelor of Music from San Diego State and a Master of Music from Roosevelt University. And he performs regularly with Minnesota Opera. We know Pablo because all of us were on the same team for several years at Minnesota Opera, where he was the creative. Oh, fuck. Creative
Development.
Development Programs Director.
Yes.
Yes!
Yeah.
And we got to work with him day in and day out every day and witness his brilliance and kindness and empathy firsthand. And of course, all of his deliciously funny reads
I do have to
And
say, I am enjoying the much shorter title these days in
yeah,
my new job.
right? That's a mouthful.
Yes.
But I think technically my title is longer, which is wild.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, but yeah, we are just so happy to have you on the show and so excited to get your perspective on the arts and culture and where we are as we all navigate the new hellscape that we're living in. Well, the new old hellscape that we're
Very
living.
familiar hellscape.
So I guess my first question for you is just, you were on the admin, well, you were a performer before you were on the admin side of things, and now you are in the philanthropic space. And so just what has that transition been like for you? What are some of the differences? What are some of the similarities? And just how's it going?
Good, generally. I think it's obviously scary times for a lot of different reasons. Um, I sometimes miss the days of being a performer and being kind of oblivious to how these things worked and just showing up to rehearsal and singing my songs. And that's about the extent of my involvement in any given arts organization. Then going to the administrative side of things, it's very much in the weeds of it. And decisions are being made at a lot of different levels within the organization, outside an organization that are impacting you, but maybe in the positions that I was I didn't necessarily have a lot of say uh, in how those decisions were made, and I was just kind of in charge of making it work. And so now being on this side of things, and it's sort of philanthropy, but I see it a little bit differently because the regional arts councils in Minnesota, or I guess arts funding in Minnesota, is very unique compared to a lot of other states, in that a lot of our arts funding comes from sales tax as part of the Land and Legacy Amendment back in 2008. And so we get quite a robust amount of funding from the state that most other states don't really have. Now, some of that because it's the land and legacy, there's some of that funding is going to natural resources, parks and trails, those types of things, conservation. Um, but then there's also within that the arts and culture fund, which is where we get a lot of our funding. That Arts and Culture Fund goes to the Minnesota State Arts Board, and a percentage of that total fund then gets distributed to all the regional arts councils. There's 11 of them in the state. And the regional arts councils are kind of determined by population and land mass. We happen to encompass the 7-county metro area. And so within that, we have 55% of the state population. So there's a lot of people that we're trying to serve. So in the way the reason I see it a little bit differently than philanthropy in its traditional sense is that we're not necessarily a foundation. We're not dealing with individual donors or a person or an institution that is holding a lot of money. This is public money. So when you all make purchases in Minnesota, a percentage of that is going towards arts funding. And as an organization, all the regional arts councils make sure that that money is being distributed in the ways that it needs to go for each community. And the reason there's 11 of them throughout the state is that each region has its own needs. So we can't necessarily always make a set of grant programs for the entire state because everyone needs something different. The different communities need different things. You're serving different populations. And so one of the neat things about the regional arts councils is that we get to make our own needs assessment for the exact people that we're serving and figuring out like what is the vehicle that we can create to distribute these funds in the way that the community sees fit. And so that feels really good to sort of be I guess a steward of those funds, and do it in a way where not only does the public have an input in terms of what are the different grants or vehicles for distributing those funds, but then ultimately the public is also the one that's making the decision of who gets funded. So we're creating sort of the structures, and then just as we receive applications for these different grants, we're making sure that they kind of fall within the parameters that we've set. And then ultimately a panel of the public, Minnesotans from this region, who are artists, arts enthusiasts, arts administrators. They're the ones making the decisions about who and what projects get funded. So that feels really good, and a very like democratic system of distributing those funds that we're all paying into.
Democracy. Remember that? That was fun.
I did got to do something similar when I lived in Washington, D.C. when I first like got out of college after going to Howard. Shout out to Howard. Working at the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities, and got to see how like arts funding worked and run grant panels and things like that. Also like chosen from the community. And I guess I'm curious about how that process like stays the same or changes based on the larger political, context, because there's a larger political context, but there is also like you still serve who you serve. You're still like supposed to be by the people, about the people, for the people. So, yeah, I'm curious about like what is maybe shifting or stickier, and what, kind of
Yeah.
stays the same, because we have these great like just protections around arts funding, prioritization of arts funding here in Minnesota.
Yeah. And I think that's an ever evolving conversation of how do you keep doing this in a way that feels good based on the values that we have. And it's tricky because I do feel so we're not a state agency and we're not necessarily an arts producing organization. We're kind of we live somewhere in the middle of that. And obviously we're seeing all these cuts in funding with anything that even remotely resembles DEI, right? And so what changes need to happen in order to make sure that those funds stay protected and that those can still go to your community, and also still live within your values and not compromise on those. I think what we're seeing a lot is less so a a difference in how we do things, but more so how we talk about how we're doing things. I think on the sort of worst case scenario, you have a target where knowing multiple people that work there, they're like, it's crazy because we feel like we had these programs and then we operationalized them. So they're no longer programs, but they're just part of our operations. And externally, the way that was communicated created this giant shitstorm that continues to have ripple effects and continued boycotts and all of those things. So like, how you talk about things really does matter. And so on the other side of things, I think we're making decisions, what I should say, our leadership is making decisions around how do we safeguard these funds so that they can still go to the people that need them the most. And so that can sometimes be sort of internal allocations of like, okay, we're going to set aside of the total applications that we receive, we're going to make sure that this percentage of the funds must go to a community that's either BIPOC, disability, queer, trans, two-spirited, so that that stays intact. I think perhaps some of the differences that I'm seeing and that I foresee sort of coming are maybe now we're not able to have programs that are only for those communities. And maybe now it has to include everybody, or anyone can apply for them. But that's where sort of those internal structures for allocation can come in handy, because you can talk about it like, hey, anyone can apply here. And you know that in the way that your operations are working, you're making sure that nothing is getting shortchanged in terms of the people that really do need it the most, and who have been historically underserved by these funding organizations. So it's sort of like an outward communication difference, but internally you're sort of building the structures to stay to protect the things that really do matter the most.
So for people like me who are regular people who have some real concerns about the policies that are coming out of Washington and how they may be reshaping the arts landscape because they're shifting the funding. Do you have a perspective on ways that we can continue to support artists that we believe in or the arts when we don't necessarily feel that we can rely on agencies or, organized philanthropy to pick up the slack?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I think in a lot of ways, and I'm trying to wear both hats and both lenses as an artist myself and as a someone who works with funding. Because on the funding side of it, I do think there's still an awareness issue of what is even available out there, for you to seek funding for your artistic projects, and not just, and I don't necessarily mean specifically just us, but there's a lot of money out there that, whether intentionally or not, there have been barriers to accessing that money, or being aware of those opportunities. So there is a little bit of that happening for sure. And I think there just needs to be, we need to be more active in physically and monetarily supporting those artists and those projects that we think are really important. I think one of the things that COVID did, and we're still seeing the effects of it, and I'm speaking even with myself, I don't go to a lot of performances anymore as much as I used to, or art exhibitions or poetry readings, even if it's like at a coffee shop or something like that. I used to do a lot more of those things pre-COVID. And I don't know if it just kind of feels like it takes more effort now. And it's maybe harder to find where those things are happening. But I do think it does take a little bit more of that effort now more than ever, and we need to be intentional about what it is that we're out there supporting. because yes, even though a byproduct of the pandemic is that a lot of those things were made available in digital forms now, which is lovely, to as a different access point. We know that there's a lot of platforms kind of profiting off of those artworks and performances, and not a lot of those funds are going back to the artists themselves. So if there's opportunities to support those things in person and pay the ticket price or make a donation, um, do it. Because yeah, seeing those things in a YouTube channel or on a short reel on Instagram isn't going to help that person make a living as an artist. Um, Going to see their exhibition, going to their performances, going to um, that coffee shop poetry slam and leaving a donation or even personal feedback. A lot of people aren't getting that anymore either, of just like the going up to an artist after their performance and saying like, hey, that really connected with me. That really resonated. Where else can I find your work? Those things aren't happening nearly as much anymore. Um, so yeah, I think it takes a different kind of effort now than maybe it did pre-COVID. Um, and then yeah, just kind of raising that awareness of opportunities that are out there um, for funding the projects that we think are important and that should be funded.
I love that. I think that's so important, that connection that you're talking about. A few years ago, I was in I perhaps some of you all don't think of me this way, but I'm actually a very shy person. But I was in Vancouver a couple of years ago. I was speaking on a panel, and part of that was there was a performance, and this guy got up there and he was reading his poetry, this young black artist, and it was so moving, and at some point during the performance, he'd mentioned that this was the first time he was ever performing his poetry in public. And there was just something that clicked in me after the show that was like, if this was his first time, I can imagine if it was my first time doing this and I didn't get some sort of feedback, that like I might not ever do it again. And the world needs to hear this man's poetry. And so I just went up to him and just started a conversation. And I could just see his like shoulders drop. And he just sort of relaxed a little and was just really like appreciative. And it was just like, like what you're talking about is so important. Because, without that support, without, both emotionally and monetarily, we might be losing some great artists because they can't afford either financially or just emotionally. Because like it takes so much emotionally to put yourself out there on a stage. All of us who are performers understand that and give of yourself. So yeah, absolutely. Please, everybody go out there, support the artists in your community in person. Um, but I have a question for you. Let's get some
Okay,
tea.
I'm ready.
Let's spill some tea. So, you and I are actual friends, IRL. So, I remember when you left Minnesota Opera, you were quite disillusioned, so disillusioned that you left the arts completely,
I did.
for a year or two. And and now you are back, and thank God, because we need you in this space. But I'm curious if if there was anything that you wanted to share that sort of about that period, and what is it that sort of brought you back to the arts, and do you feel any different? Do you still feel that frustration that you were feeling?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there.
Hmm.
Yeah, I remember, I mean, when I left, I mean, I think it had been sort of a long time coming. Just and not necessarily entirely because of um, that particular company or that particular set of people who were there. It really wasn't that. I think I was finding myself in a place where I wasn't feeling super connected to the art that was being made in that building and in that particular art form as well. There were very, very few works that I truly felt a connection to. And as someone who was in a position where I'm talking to other people and trying to engage other people in the art form and trying to show uh, all the different access points that they can arrive to, that was really hard when I wasn't necessarily personally feeling that. Um, and ultimately deciding to step away from it. I mean, I remember that was the shortest meeting I ever had with Lee. After I said that I was about to go in a different direction, career-wise. It did sort of and not that I want to frame it in the way of like you don't know what you have until it's gone kind of thing. It wasn't quite that, but I do think it for the first time it helped me see it from the outside, um, which I mean I had been in opera since school without really much of a break at all, um, and so I never really got the opportunity to see things from the outside. Um, and I wasn't sure whether I would ever go back to it in any capacity, whether it was as a performer or in working in administration again. Um, and I still don't know that I would do that in the same capacity that I did before. Um, because I think a lot of those feelings haven't necessarily gone away in the sense of feeling that connection. I don't know that I particularly feel um, super strongly connected to very much of the operatic genre right now. Um, and so I think whatever it is that I do, I genuinely want to feel strongly about it. Um, and so now sort of being in the arts world in a different capacity, it feels good to be in a position to um, help others sort of realize the things that they are very much passionate about and passionate for, the things that they want to see out in the world, whether it's the applicants themselves applying for something that they're building or that they're creating, or for the panelists who are making the decisions about what ultimately will get funding, and realizing what they want to see out in the world. So being in that position feels good, especially in a time when I'm not necessarily like drawn in one particular lane more than another. This allows me to sort of look at it from a very wide lens and feel like I'm still making a positive impact um, on the arts, which are still very important to me as a whole. Um, so going from a very niche space to a very broad space, even though they're both within the arts world, um, I think I needed to look at things from a bit of a broader lens. And I don't know that I would have gotten to where I am now in the way that I'm seeing things had it not been for that period that I stepped away. Um, because I did sort of get that opportunity to just like see it from that outside perspective and uh, look at it for what it was and what it wasn't, sort of removed from maybe the heightened feelings that I had at the time when I was leaving the opera. Um, I can kind of look at it a little bit more objectively now, which that in turn is very useful in my position now because I can't necessarily go into it with any preference towards one thing over another. I have to look at things very objectively. Um, yeah, so I do think sort of that period was very useful, I think. It allowed me to try some things that I always wanted to try. Um, like, a very short venture in real estate. I had been curious about doing that probably since I was in my teens, and I think I would have always wondered, what if? Um, and so I'm very glad that I did that. I'm very glad that I had that experience, as difficult as it was and as short-lived as it was. Um, I think it became very useful in different parts of my life. I very recently moved, and going into the process of selling my old house and buying a new house and all of those things. I came to that process with a lot more knowledge than the first time around, which was great. It allowed me to go through that without a ton of stress, because I kind of knew what to expect. I knew the different levers that were going to be pulled by the different realtors and all that stuff. And for me, it just helped me feel that much more at ease in something that can usually be a very stressful aspect of life. Um, and then going into a different program, I started managing a mentorship program, which again, really, I felt connected to that for a while, and um, purposeful. Um, the people that I worked with were really lovely, and after a while, I did sort of feel a little bit of that tug of like, wow, I haven't engaged in the arts in quite a while. This is no longer like a part of my daily life, it feels weird. Um, and that's sort of when I started saying, well, maybe I'm gonna tell the artistic staff that I'm gonna be interested in, and maybe doing a chorus show. And part of that actually came with the opportunity to be in Cruzar la Cara de la Luna, the mariachi opera, which I was like, okay, if I'm gonna come back for something, it's probably gonna be that. So when that opportunity presented itself, I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll do it. Um, I'll re-engage, and it allowed me to sort of like step back a little bit into that space of being a performer where you're not necessarily involved in how the sausage is made, but you just get to visit the fun part of it, and then step away from it as soon as it's done.
Amen.
So, obviously got to see a lot of people there that were a big part of my life in some capacity or another during those 5 years that I was at Minnesota Opera. And then I got to step away when the show was done. And it left me feeling like, okay, like I know now that I don't hate this. I don't want to stay away from this forever. I don't have those harsh feelings that I maybe did at one point anymore. I'm not harboring that resentment. And now I'm kind of open to, if there's an opportunity out there to do a gig that I find interesting, I'll do it. If I don't find it interesting, I don't have to do it, and I don't feel any um, responsibility to take whatever performing opportunity comes out, just because I don't really depend on it in that way anymore. I can just do it because I truly feel connected to it, or I find it interesting, or there's something that I can gain from that experience. Um, and that's a really nice position to be in. I think that's a much more healthy approach for me personally, to engage in an art form that uh, I've ridden the whole roller coaster of, you know, when I was in school, I was obsessed with opera. I couldn't stop listening to opera. I knew all the singers. I knew the productions that every company was doing. I was like hyper fixated on every aspect of opera. And then that came down and came back up and came back down. And I think I'm sort of at that point in the roller coaster where you're just kind of doing the last little like right before you kind of go back to getting off the ride. So it feels nice to be there.
Nice. Well, I still want to see your HGTV show, but that's just me.
One day. Yeah. As I'm sitting sort of in the corner of my kitchen, and I'm like, every time that I look, I'm like, oh, I could do this differently. Maybe if I move the cabinets from here to here. So you might see some before and after photos at some point on Instagram.
I love it. I would like to see that. I
And the
believe,
gardens too.
yes,
Yes.
the
There are no
gardens.
gardens currently at my new house, so I'm gonna have to rebuild everything from scratch.
I just thought of a title. Are you
Ooh,
home yet? Get it? Are you
nice.
home yet?
Nice.
Uh? Uh? Lee, you don't like it? Okay. Okay. Well, I tried. I tried. Paige, go ahead. Fine. I'll
I
just
love it.
be
I
over
could
here.
see
I'll be
the show
quiet.
happening though. I love it. I'm there with you. I could see like it being specifically like maybe people who are artsier or don't have the traditional income or that are like first time home buyers, kind of situation. And you're like giving them the
Yeah.
tea and like helping them. Yeah, I see it. I see it. I support this.
Nice.
But I really like am resonating with just all that you are saying about your journey. And I think what I'm like recognizing and drawing like similarities to myself with is just feeling like really values aligned and like really heart led,
Yeah.
like so much of what brings us to the arts in the first place is how it feels, how it we see it um like helping us know ourselves, helping us to connect to others. And that's why we stick with it. And once that part is feeling hard, it's like, hold on, why am I here? And like kind of need to go to something else that maybe helps you get that back. Like I
Yeah.
left arts administration also after the opera and have not returned back to arts administration quite yet, but still in the arts. But I went and focused on birth work and on
Yeah.
organizing and like supporting people and like connection and community in that way also like brought me right back around to why the
Nice.
arts was important. And
Yes.
yeah, sometimes you gotta like go and live a different part of life. Sometimes you gotta do it for the plot, and then you come back, and then the art feels even better.
That's so true. Yes, yes, yes. All of that.
Yeah, yeah. I am. I mean, this also has me yeah, curious on like what you see is like those overall communal like kind of supports that the arts need. It is bigger than just what is, the what is happening in a building, what is happening with especially like a larger arts organization. Like it's about community like health overall. And I think people in funding positions often hear that from the people that they're working with too, like maybe giving them this funding, but there's a whole ecosystem of things that are impacting the arts and our organization. So I wonder if maybe you could like maybe speak to some of that.
Yeah, yeah. The community piece is big. And obviously everyone sort of has their own definition of what that word means to them. And
Yeah.
um, I think in a lot of the projects or proposals that I see kind of coming through my I almost at my desk, but it's not really a desk. But uh, through my email or there are things that I sort of group them into two buckets mentally of like people who are creating something because that is um, their artistic medium and it is something from within that they are putting out in the world. And there are other projects and not to say one has more value than the other, but there are projects that have a more outward purpose, that is using art for the betterment of community in some kind of way. And obviously that can go in a lot of different directions, whether it's uh, workshops for elders who maybe are feeling isolated, and we're bringing people together to create art together, and also that's helping them build relationships with one another. So that sort of being the byproduct of the art making is the relationships, is the community, is the lack of isolation. And I think that's something that I'm personally like drawn to when I see different proposals. Like I said, I'm not necessarily the one deciding who gets funded, but when I'm reading through applications, I really resonate with some of those that are like using art for another purpose here. Um, and I think the community piece is also, it's not just physically bringing people together, but what happens once you bring them together? It's, are they actually speaking to one another? Are they actually building relationships? Do those relationships last beyond that time that you brought them together? That's where the community part, I think, really can thrive. Because, we've all been a part of performances or things like that are literally bringing thousands of people together into one theater. And what happens after that performance? Do those people ever speak to each other again? I don't know. And so not necessarily all gatherings like that turn into community building. But when I do see those proposals come to my desk, and it's really exciting to see all the different ways that people are sort of trying to achieve that, whether it's we're bringing together people because we have cultural ties to one another, or we're bringing people together because there's a common barrier or obstacle that we're all kind of facing, and we're going to work through things together. Um, Things like that I find really inspiring, sometimes more so than the art itself that's being made. And so that's where I kind of feel like being in this position has been really fulfilling, is that I can kind of live in that and see all of these different things happening out in the world. But yeah, I think that piece, the what happens after the art making, is sort of the things that I'm really interested in.
The art has to have a point, but it'd be like,
Totally.
what was the what are we carrying after this?
And we have grants for both, for
Yeah.
people who are making art just to make art and
Yes.
to do the thing. Like there's absolutely a value to that, a personal value, personal fulfillment,
Absolutely.
self-actualization, all of those things.
Mhm.
Super, super important. And there's funding for other things as well. And so it's nice to see both happening. And yeah.
Yeah.
So if you make pointless art, talk to Pablo.
Yes.
I want everybody to be able to make the nonsense art too. The fun, the wacky, the nope, this don't have much of a point. I think sometimes I think about who even gets the resources and the funding and the abundance to be able to do that, which is why positions like yours are so important, and organizations like yours are so important. Like, yeah, I want more folks to have that room to play.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. And sometimes you need that financial stability piece of it to allow yourself to play.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Very real.
Well, I think we are coming towards the end of our time together. Pablo, thank you so much for joining us. My heart is full from this
Yay.
Oh,
conversation.
likewise, likewise.
No,
It's
and I'm,
always a joy to speak with you all.
and I don't know if I'm putting all your business on blast, but you and your lovely wife, Ashlyn, are getting ready to have a baby.
A bebe, indeed. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
June
congratulations.
2025.
Oh my gosh, it's so
Thank you.
crazy. Wait, it's June, right?
Yeah, yeah, mid-June,
Uh, So
hopefully.
a little Gemini.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that'll be
I'm
fun.
sort of hoping that it's going to be a little late so that maybe they're a Cancer instead, because I'm a Cancer.
And I still love you. But that's because you have
Cancers are great.
that's because you have that Sagittarius rising.
That is true. That is true.
Well, congratulations. I cannot
Thank
wait. We'll
you.
have to have you back and you can tell us all about fatherhood in
Oh my
this
gosh.
new reality that we are living in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does sort of bring an interesting thought, I guess. Um, how do you bring up a child in this reality? I don't necessarily have a great answer to it. But I think something that Ashlyn and I talked about a lot when once this kind of became a reality and we were deciding whether we were going to move, and we had both just moved jobs, um, was just this idea of we know the world out there is shenanigans. And it's going to be shenanigans every single day, all times of the day. And we are fortunate enough to have some control over our personal circumstance and the type of community that we're building, the type of things that we are engaging in, the physical surroundings that we are putting ourselves in, and we're hoping that all of that is built with joy, that it's built with our values in mind. And that is something that we have control over. And so I think last time around, when this was the reality, was a time of a lot of despair and a lot of anger and a lot of uh, fist shaking into the world. And while that still is definitely there, I think this time around we're trying to be more active in not letting those shenanigans sort of impact our joy, impact our community, and we're going to be protective of one another and protective of our community and protective of the things and resources and art and all of the things that we really care about in all the different ways that we can. We're Arts Advocacy Day was earlier this week at the state capitol, and certainly that is a way to engage with that. It is not the only way. Like we were saying earlier, you can just go to the coffee shop to watch a poetry slam. You can engage in all the different arts activities that are out in the world in person, hopefully, if you're able to. Um, and just keep engaging in the world in the way that you want to live it and that in the way that you want to see it. And that's really all we can do. Now there's a lot of folks that are going to feel very compelled uh, to do more of the protesting out in the streets, and that is certainly a very important way of staying keeping things not getting out of hand in one direction. Um, and also, there's a lot of different ways to try to build that world that we're hoping to see. And if none of that goes well, I am in the process of getting my dual citizenship. So
There you go. There you go. Well, if there's anyone who can rise to the challenge, I think it's you and Ashlyn. You both are just such wonderful people, and I'm so happy for you, and I'm so happy that you agreed to be our very first guest on Score
oh my
2.0. Isn't that
gosh.
crazy? You just made
Yay. Happy
history.
reboot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. But we will but before we go, do you have anything you want to promote? Any socials or anything that's happening that the people should know about?
That is an excellent question. I think my brain is fully in baby prep mode that I have literally nothing outside of this happening. So I don't have any performances or any things that I'm currently trying to promote out in the world, but it is fully, prep time for the next 3, 4 months, and trying to build the home that we want our kiddo to grow up in.
Well, that makes a whole bunch of sense, but we'll put your IG in the show notes.
Perfect.
And people can people can follow you that way. But Pablo, thank you so much for joining us. This was a wonderful conversation. We love you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Bye. And we'll be right back with Pure Black Joy. All right, and we are back, and I just want to thank Pablo Siqueiros once again for joining us. What a grounding conversation. That's the word that you used, Paige, and I feel like that was a very good word for that. Because I think sometimes this world can get very frustrating, the arts world in particular, but the world in general. And so it's just nice to have that perspective of, things really do get better. And we can all breathe, right?
There are still good things happening
There,
out
there's
there.
still joy to be had.
Mhm.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of joy to be had, ooh, walked right into that one. That was nice. It's time for our favorite segment of the show. As always, we like to leave you on a little note of pure Black joy. So this is the segment where we celebrate the Black people, places, culture, art, music, food, that is making us happy this week. So who would like to go first?
I will gladly go first.
Okay.
So, I've recently been alerted to a new TV show featuring the one, the only, the talented, the gorgeous Laverne Cox.
Woohoo.
Yes, we know her. We love her. Um, Featuring her and George Wallace. It is a
Hey.
comedy.
I would
It
hope
called
so.
yes, called Clean Slate. It is called Clean Slate. It looks like a bundle of Black trans joy. According to IMDb and their short description, it is about Harry, an Alabama car wash owner who is surprised when his estranged child returns home after 17 years. Now a determined, proud trans woman named Desiree. And the previews that I have seen just look so just precious. Just yes, yes, what we need. I have not watched it yet. But it seems like it's gonna be good. It looks very, very promising. We need stories like this right now, stories of Black trans people, especially being a part of a community, being seen for who they are. navigating family dynamics and friendships, that and it not being just entirely based in horror stories and trauma, like that is real too. And I'm sure like the show will also address the rifts and even like the generational differences between this young Black trans woman and her father, a Black man who is an elder. I know it's going to feature all of that, but to have it not just be based in tragedy feels wonderful. And I'm ready to watch. I can't wait. Yeah.
Well, that sounds delightful.
Yes.
And I love
Yes.
George Wallace too. I follow
Right?
him on Twitter. He's so funny.
Right? I was like, this is a good combo. This is
Mhm.
I'm excited to see the two of them specifically having this father-daughter relationship. Like I feel like it's gonna be wonderful.
Yep.
And as you point out, so timely.
So timely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Nene is also on the show.
Oh, is she really?
Yes.
Oh, well, good for Lenithia.
Yeah. Yeah. It's my kind of carrying on, I can already tell.
Oh, absolutely. I'm extra tuned in now.
Yes. So I have a little bit of Black news as well, and it's all good. So you ever notice how frequently Black people have to acknowledge to other people many things that we have done or accomplished, or that we were the first, or that this thing was invented by one of us, all of the good things that
You
my
don't
dad used to
say.
do
What?
nonstop.
Really?
I've never had to do that in my life.
Not aware of
Never.
this detail.
I didn't spend 20 years in college to be able to do this professionally at all. But someone else who spent a very long time in college is also trying to do something about it. So Dr. Marie-Ange Tardieu, she is the director of the Skin and Longevity Clinic, has created the online Museum of African Americans,
Oh,
because I
wow.
guess Dr. Tardieu is as tired as we are of having to tell everybody of all the amazing things that Black people are constantly doing. But this museum in particular will focus on the achievements of Black people in medicine. So I got really excited
Ooh.
when I saw this, because I was like, oh, it's a whole museum of Black doctors. They clearly are going to have an exhibit about me, but not this kind of doctor. But they still might have an exhibit based on me. We shall see. Maybe we can get some of that Pablo money and spread it around, and some artists can do something useful. But they're going to cover ancient healers, the fight for education,
Wow.
medical pioneers, modern day achievements, and what I'm most excited about, civil rights in medicine, because medical racism is very real.
Yes,
It
it
is
is.
affecting people every single day, and the more attention we can bring to this, the more good we can do for people. So we will continue talking about Black doctors on the show, because I think it is critically important, not just to the health of Black people, but to the health of this country, for there to be more Black doctors and for us to understand and appreciate the many accomplishments of this incredibly important group of people. Put me in y'all museum. Thank you.
That's wonderful. That is so important. And for those of
It's
you
so
out there who are
important.
listening who might not realize what a scourge medical racism
Mm.
is and always
Mm.
has been, just please remember our current Secretary of Health and Human
Oh,
Services actually
Jesus.
sat in his confirmation hearing saying that Black people need different sort of vaccines because our bodies react to them in different ways, which of course is absolute
Counterfactual.
garbage.
Yes.
Um, so it's real and it's going to
Hmm.
have real consequences, especially in the next 4 years. So I think
Yeah.
this is a beautiful resource that is absolutely 1000% needed. And I hope all sorts of people will avail themselves of this resource. That's exciting.
www.museumofafricanamericans.org. Super easy to remember. I'm a little bit jealous that she managed to get that great domain name, but please do check it out and support it.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, my pure black joy. So as I think I've talked about on this show before, even if I haven't seen the movies, the Oscars are kind of my Super Bowl every year. I grew up, wanting to make movies, and so it just takes me back to my childhood a little bit. And this year my husband and I were out running errands, and so we missed the beginning of the show, but when I sat down and turned the TV on, lo and behold, what did I see? But the award for Best Costume Design,
Oh,
which went to
yeah.
Mr. Paul
Mm.
Tazwell, who is the
Yay.
first black man to win that award, which is so exciting. He's so accomplished. He's been
Mhm.
nominated for 50 11 Tonys, one for Hamilton, and now he has won the Academy Award for Wicked and all of those iconic designs and Glinda's dress and Elphaba's all of her business and
Mhm.
those glasses and all that stuff. So, just want to send some congratulations out to Mr. Tazwell. Well deserved,
Mhm.
and thank you so much for doing what you do.
We should
Yay.
also point out that he won the Emmy for doing the costumes for The Wiz Live a
Oh,
couple of years
yes,
ago.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Oh,
Also well
yeah.
deserved for that.
yes, because the
Mhm.
costumes were the favorite part of it for me.
And there were several performances of songs from The Wiz during the ceremony, which,
I heard I had to sit it
yes.
out.
They were okay. They were okay. And I know why you sat
You
out.
know
And
why I set it out.
I'm not, it's fine.
No, y'all can be mad at me. That's fine.
For
Oh,
this year's Oscars?
I'm not mad at you at all.
Mhm.
Yes, this year's Oscars.
Curious.
Well, one was a tribute to Quincy Jones, and the other
Okay,
was,
that makes sense.
yes,
Mhm.
and the other was um, a musical celebration of interpretations of The Wizard of Oz through the years. So,
Mm.
music from The Wizard of Oz, music from The Wiz, music from Wicked, sung by Leah's favorite.
Yes. Yes.
And can I just also just give an honorable mention to Stacey Rush from The Real Housewives of Potomac because she and all those other ladies made me laugh during the reunion because her she broke up with her man and like he was talking to her crazy and it was scandalous and like whatever. And at the end, Andy was like, "So it's been a really tough evening for you." And she was like, "It's been awful, but still I rise." And all the other women just fell out. Like, leave Maya alone. You leave Maya alone.
I love Black people so much. And look, Karen is having a bad week.
Oh,
So, like, maybe we
Karen.
need this counterweight.
Karen.
Yeah.
Did you know that the rehab that she went to was for 48 hours and it had horseback riding and deep tissue massage and wine tasting?
Pardon?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. It was a
Wine
spa, it was not a
tasting
rehab.
at rehab. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, she's going to have some time to think about
Man,
if
that's
that
why
was the right choice.
I'm just saying, that's why you went to jail.
Yeah, no,
Oh, not
for
jail.
real. Yeah,
I hope that Cabernet.
was worth it.
Oh dear. All right. Anyway,
All
enough of that. Thank you all so much for listening, for joining us. Thank you for letting us come in your ear holes. Yes, that's gonna be a thing.
We're keeping it. We're keeping it.
We're keeping it.
We're keeping it. It'll look cute on the t-shirts. So.
It really will. I could see the design.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, we're gonna monetize it. It's gonna be. Oh, I can't wait. But you can support us by leaving us a review wherever you're listening, but especially Apple Podcasts. That will help get the word out about the show. Leave us 5 stars, some words, tell your friends, hit that subscribe button. All of those things are wonderful ways to support us. If you'd like to reach out, if you have an opinion about what show we should cover after we're done with Noah's Ark, the Score Podcast 2.0 at gmail.com. I think that's it. Whatever the correct one is in the show notes. And I think that's it. Thank you again to Pablo for joining us. But before we go, any words of wisdom?
Resist.
Yes.
Do not comply in advance.
Do not obey in advance, please.
Absolutely. Do not be complicit in somebody making a fool of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it. We will see you next time where we will be coming to the end of season 2 of Noah's Ark. And I, for one, am very interested to see what happens. You said it ends on a cliffhanger, Lee?
It does. But I did manage to procure a copy of the Rona Chronicles, so maybe we'll know what ultimately happens to them, and I'll hit y'all with that.
Okay. All right.
Yes, please.
Yes, well, that sounds great. Well, we will see you in 2 weeks for that. But until then, bye, America.
Goodbye.
I'm going to Spain.